Hello, welcome to Wake Nation 21, the first and only fan-fueled YouTube channel dedicated to everything Wake Forest athletics. My name is Josh Chilton, and I am here alone today. Shane cannot join us tonight, so you're stuck with just me, but I am wearing a shirt that symbolizes the flame of anger that I still cannot get past regarding what happened against Georgia Tech this past Saturday at a Legacy Stadium. As Wake fans, we have been through some traumatic losses. And I think as a fan base, I noticed something last week when our video got over 1,000 views for the first time in the preview game for Georgia Tech. We got over 1,000 views, not from the Wake fan loyal, fan base, but from Georgia Tech's fan base. And so it just kind of symbolized what we've been going through over the years. But it also made me realize something that we have an attitude about Wake Forest athletics that needs to change, especially regarding football. Now, I know the basketball program has fallen from the years of Tim Duncan and Chris Paul and Jeff Teague and James Johnson, Alfred Camino years to only making one NCAA tournament in the last 16 years. But the football program, it remains true that we are the most successful program in the state of North Carolina this century. And this loss was perhaps the most painful loss I can remember, even more painful than the loss to Clemson in double overtime back in 2021, when at least I could take solace in the fact that we were ranked 16th at the time and they beat us fair and square. And there wasn't one glaring thing that felt just like so unfair amidst all of the rebuilding that we've had to do over the past 2 years. But this loss felt especially traumatizing. It was heartbreaking, but we need to move forward. So this episode is about moving forward. And it's about us as Wake Forest fans supporting this team who deserves our support. So I've got a slideshow that we're going to talk through. And the title of the slideshow is REFS Steal Big Win from the DEACS. Wake Forest falls to Georgia Tech in overtime to fall to 2-2 overall and 0-2 in conference play. So this is a slide that we shared last week. These were the keys to winning the game. And I'm not going to talk too much about each of these keys, but I just want to identify what Shane and I talked about going into the game so that we can see how we did in those areas. Were those areas correct as points of focus for us? And so just some of the keys that we talked about last week to beating Georgia Tech was stopping the run. And looking at the running statistics of Jamal Haynes and Malachi Hosley, we did a phenomenal job of stopping the run. Haynes King, on the other hand, we didn't do such a great job of stopping him from running the ball, being able to run the ball. So Damon Claiborne, we'll talk about what he was able to do, albeit limited by some of the injuries that seem to be lingering with him. Our fourth quarter performance, we talked about whether Ashford, the defense, and the entire team could stay locked in when fatigue hits. We can talk about how we did on that, containing King in the pocket when he does have have to pass, were we able to strike the balance? And overall, I think we were able to keep him from getting loose on passing plays. It was the designed runs up the middle for Haynes King that really killed us. Home game advantage. So we had weather issues potentially going into the game. But once that weather cleared up, it seems that like 30,000 people showed up at the game. We had a good crowd. So I was happy to hear about that. And then also, could we outcoach Brent Key and his staff? And I'll talk about a little bit of that as well as we get into the slideshow. So my prediction was way off. I thought we would have a strong performance, but we would end up losing 31-21. Shane was a little more on the money in terms of the prediction. We ended up losing by 1 point instead of winning by 1 point. But in terms of like what the score looked like and how close it really was as a game, I think Shane was right there on the money with us, right? And so this is the play. This is the play that will go down in infamy. This is the horrific call that never was, that cost us the big time program defining win against Georgia Tech. And, you know, the ACC officials missed the late call and they acknowledged as much. The ACC said Saturday that officials missed a pivotal call that allowed the 16th ranked Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets to eventually overcome the Wake Forest Demon Deacons 30-29 in overtime in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, with the Jackets having no timeouts left and us having the lead and working on that clock and only needing one first down to put it away. Robbie Ashford knew that they jumped off sides. And so he took the free play, the deep shot that he was coached to take and threw it deep and tried to complete it deep down the sideline. Now there's some speculation that they also missed that it was a pass interference on that play. So the ways in which we were screwed over just cannot be overstated. I've heard some people say, you know, Micah Mays was wide open for a short first down, which would have sealed the game anyways. I just can't look at it that way. I have to look at it as Robbie saw what he saw, which is this, which he thought he had a free play, and he took the shot as if he had the free play, as if we would have a first down regardless. And they missed not only the glaring offsides call, which you can see the player at the bottom of the screen being clearly offsides, but perhaps a pass interference call as he took the deep shot. So just a heartbreaking way to lose. Let's look at some of the statistics just to kind of gauge how we performed overall. You know, Haynes King as a passer, he was his normal efficient self, 28 for 42, which is a pretty good completion percentage, 243 yards, one passing touchdown, but his rushing killed us. It absolutely killed us, and I think it foreshadows what will be our greatest challenge coming into this Virginia Tech game. So Haynes King was able to rush 21 times for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. Robbie Ashford, on the other hand, 13 for 28, really hurt us with some early misses on some layup throws. And that is something that we have seen develop as sort of a trend with Robbie, missing the layups, but being able to throw some beautiful deep balls, right? And rushing for 10 times for 82 yards and a touchdown. So great rushing efficiency from Ashford. And we've heard throughout the season, a lot of calls for Deshaun Purdy to get in the game. And I'm not saying specifically that this game proved that Robbie was head and shoulders above Deshaun Purdy, but I think what it did prove is that Coach Ezel's offense, the offense we have built, is designed to have a rushing quarterback. And without that rushing element, once Robbie came out with the knee injury, and even when he came back in with the brace, whether it was when Purdy was in the game or Robbie was limited, it just kind of showed that our offensive line isn't good enough for us not to have a rushing threat as our quarterback. So we're going to talk more about Robbie's injury, about the fact that Demond doesn't seem to be 100%. And despite not being 100%, he's still rushed the ball 21 times for almost 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. That touchdown run in overtime where the blocking really wasn't there. He just did a Damon Claiborne where he got to the middle of the line and he was like, oh, well, nothing's here. I'm just going to outrun everyone and just be a superstar running back. I continue to maintain that healthy Damon Claiborne is the best running back in the ACC and perhaps the best running back in the entire nation. None of our pass catchers had more than 3 receptions. We really kind of spread the ball around. And that brings me to another element that might have contributed to this loss is it seemed like Chris Barnes got banged up when he caught that first deep ball that Robbie threw right on the money to him that led to an early score for us. I don't know if that had anything to do with his lack of involvement in the second half, but I do know that Chris Barnes was not involved in the second half. And so we have to question, was it a health thing or was that just a failure in getting him involved? But none of our pass catchers had more than 3 receptions. And penalties, once again, 8 penalties from us for 81 yards. Now, 2 or 3 of those penalties, so including the non-call on the defensive offsides, I thought there were at least 2 penalties, the holding on Carlos Hernandez and the holding on Lely, that were phantom calls. I didn't go back and I didn't watch like the all 11 tape on those, but based on what we saw on the television, those were very sketchy calls as well. But Georgia Tech only had 4 penalties for 43 yards. So again, these are just little things that when you add them all up together could have contributed to the loss. Quincy Bryant, Nick Anderson, in terms of being our standouts on defense, I thought they both played amazing games. You can see the speed in our linebacker room. You can see the speed in our defensive backfield stand out a lot. Karan Prunty played a great game despite getting a late PI call that I, again, thought was questionable. We didn't have any sacks. We only had 4 tackles for loss. We did have that one forced fumble after Connor missed the field goal attempt. But overall, Wake's offense had more total yards than Georgia Tech's offense. We outgained them by 32 yards overall, and the refs screwed us. The ACC admitted it, and now it's kind of like, where do we go from here? Does the fire in the hearts of our players and our fans extinguish? Or does that fire, that anger build? Do we pour some gasoline on it? Which is what I'm saying is we need to pour some more gasoline on the fire as fans, as players, and use this loss against Georgia Tech to fuel us to become the team that we're continuing to grow to become. Because a lot of people questioned Coach Dickert's hiring. There's been a lot of skepticism regarding Robbie Ashford. There's been just a lot of cynicism all around. But this Wake Forest fan, believes in Coach Dickert. His press conference that he had on Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember. I think it was Monday. Just the way he expressed his continued enthusiasm about this team, grace. He acknowledged that the ACC made the wrong call, but he also, talked about other things that Wake had in their control. So he was able to separate the things that were out of our control, which were soul crushing things. You can't get those things back. But he also chose to focus on the things that we could change and the things that we will continue to change moving forward. And I just need to reiterate as a fan that I believe in Coach Dickert. I believe in the talent that he was able to bring to Wake Forest in this year. Being a first year head coach, inheriting a program that had 2 back-to-back 4-8 seasons. There have been seasons in the past, even with Dave Clawson, where I'm like, all right, the guys, they're trying their asses off, but like we just don't have the talent to compete on either one side of the ball or both sides of the ball. I do not believe that is the case anymore. I think Coach Dickert has brought in plenty of talent for us to compete with just about anyone in the league. Um, and Scott Jones says, I was at the game and was wrong about Deshaun Purdy. And I think it's great when we as fans can acknowledge what Robbie Ashford has done for us. Like, he's not the perfect quarterback. Like, and I don't think he's ever going to be. But what he does bring to this offense, and what I think is key, is that Coach Ezell's offense and the personnel we have on the offensive line, it is highly dependent on a rushing quarterback. And, Deshaun Purdy may have a lot of potential, and I'm excited about that potential in the future, but he is not a rushing quarterback. And so if he's not a rushing quarterback, he's got to be able to see Micah Mays wide open when he breaks off of a couple guys trying to sack him to move the sticks, because he can't move the sticks with his legs. And so coming into this next week, as far as updates, the depth chart came out. Robbie Ashford's listed as the starting quarterback for the Virginia Tech game. Is he 100%? Is he going to be wearing the knee brace? Is he going to be as explosive as a runner? That is a huge question, right? Same thing with Demond. He's listed as the starting, I put QB, but you guys know what I meant, running back for the Virginia Tech game on the depth chart. Is he 100%? Is it the ribs? Is it the shoulder? Is it both? Like, we need on the offensive side of the ball, we need Robbie and we need Demond to put our best foot forward. And so on one hand, I'm relieved that it wasn't like season ending for Robbie. I think that would have been trouble for the team based on what we saw from Deshaun. But with Demond, it's like, is this going to linger all season? Is it going to limit his snack count? That is yet to be determined. Scott Jones, again, impressive performance by our DEACS. Too bad they did not receive the deserved win. And it was a deserved win. Like, it won't show up in the win column, but like the heart. I know we let them come back in the second half. And I know we had the 14-point lead in the second half, like to start the second half. And we were about to score though. Like it was a different game because in the NC State game, we started going flat with like 5 minutes left in the second quarter and just stayed flat the rest of the game. What happened in this game was Robbie picks up the fumbled bad snap and takes it for like 40, 50 yards to get us into the red zone. And then he gets hurt on that play. Then Deshaun has to come in. Then we have to settle for 3. And then the momentum swings because we can't move the ball. And by the time Robbie gets back in, we're in this tight game, but we fight like hell to win the game. And I'll talk about the decision making towards the end regarding the 2-point conversion here in a second. But I wanted to note that Braylon Johnson is listed as the starting safety, as the replacement for Tongue. Now, Braylon, I'm sure you guys and all of us at home were like, what are you doing? Like, he was being super aggressive. And you can tell he has talent, but he got the late hit, unnecessary roughness. Then he got another penalty. And I was just like, dude, like, you're so talented. You're showing us this aggressive fight dog mentality, but you just got to take it down just a notch, brother. So I'm hoping, I was glad to see him still being the starting safety in place of Tongue, and let Miles Turpin come in on some snaps as well, because Braylon Johnson is a very talented player. But I believe the coaching staff will talk to him and kind of like say, hey, these things we cannot afford. Be yourself, but don't go that extra. You have to have the mental awareness not to go to that extra place that's going to cost us penalties and potentially cost us games. So stock up. I always do stock up. First half performance. We're up 17-3 at half. Our defense is flying around. Haynes King hasn't really got loose with his legs very much. Stock up the offense when Robbie's legs are 100%. Just point blank, period. Yes, he misses layups. He needs to learn to have a little touch when it's time to put a little touch on the ball. But we have to say that when Robbie's legs are 100%, the stock is up for this Wake Forest offense. Stock up on the warrior, Damon Claiborne, who's got rib problems. He's got shoulder problems. He's having to come out for snaps where we really need him, but he's still coming back in. He's shown this in past seasons when he's had injuries, just the ability to be a warrior and to be so tough, to come back in when you're hurt. You're not quite injured enough to be out, but you're hurting really bad physically. Demond showed that, right? And then stock up going for 2 at the end of the game. I love that. Just the idea of just putting them away on their heels. But that's going to get me to some stock down here. And Stan, I will rank Wake here as we go a little further into the presentation. But for now, I'm just going to talk stock down real quick, allowing another second half comeback. It is a trend, despite the way it happened, losing our quarterback on that, crucial first drive. despite that, we still lost a 14-point lead, which became a 17-point lead. And we let Haynes King run the ball. And we knew he was running the ball. And they were doing these fake pitches and then quarterback power. And it's like, we have to know that's coming and we have to be able to stop it. And the most helpless feeling you can have in the world is when you know a play's coming and you still can't stop it. And so we weren't able to do that. And that was part of why we lost. Stock down, Robbie, Demond, Chris Barnes, all banged up at points of the game, right? And us not having them at 100%, if all those three guys have been 100%, I think we win this game going away. We don't have to worry about overtime. We don't even have to worry about the refs screwing us over. I think we comfortably beat the 16th ranked team in the nation, and we're off to the races. The enthusiasm around the program is just lifted tremendously. The lack of aggression in play calling during the second half, once Robbie came back in, it felt like we were just trying to be conservative, eke out the win by the skin of our teeth. I didn't see the deep shots anymore that we took in the first half. I know it was hard when Deshaun was in there because we might not have trusted them completely, but I just did not see the same aggression in the second half play calling. And the 2-point conversion, I did not like that play call. I did not like the play call at all. And here's my reasons why. So we come out in a certain formation. Georgia Tech calls timeout. And then we come out in the exact same formation. We should have called timeout after they call timeout just for the sake of gamemanship. Like, I don't know if they changed the play when Georgia Tech called timeout when we were going for the 2-point conversion. But what I did not like is us coming out in a formation, them calling timeout to adjust. They probably had some keys and said, okay, when Wake's in this formation, they like to run the quarterback sprint out, and that's probably what they're going to do. When they call timeout, we should have called timeout. We should have came out in an entirely different formation, even if we ran the same play. But I just didn't like the play call in general because Robbie's legs were not 100%. And so because he wasn't 100%, the threat of him rolling out and running into the end zone to pull the defenders out of the end zone and maybe free up our receivers just wasn't there the way it might have been if he was 100% healthy. And so, it just didn't work out. And he kind of limped out there and then tried to go back the other way. And then by then I knew it was done. He threw it up for an interception and we were just hurting by then. And I'm having trouble. I got a few comments in. Let me highlight some of these comments so I can make sure to address them. Don't feel bad about that. Everyone we play knows King is going to carry the football and no one can stop it. That is absolutely true. I appreciate that comment. Y'all's wide receivers were on crack, took some massive shots, and hung on to the ball. Kudos. Yeah, the Racanelli and the Hernandez, both like with clutch catches. I'm guessing the Stan guy is a Georgia Tech fan. Yeah, just impressive. I should have acknowledged both those catches were just phenomenal. And then Scott Jones, I agree that we should have called timeout. I saw it live and told my friend that we should have had 2 running backs. Yeah, we've been using this 2 running back formation, right? And like that had been working a lot. Like maybe we didn't believe Demond was healthy enough, to pull that off. but I just didn't like the gamemanship side of that, where they called timeout and we didn't change the formation. But I love going for two, but I think it's a learning experience. This coaching staff is still relatively young. Coach Azell, he's only in his second year as an offensive coordinator. These are learning experiences that we just have to learn from. And so I wish it would have gone a different way. I know we all, as Wake fans, wish it had gone a different way. We should have won the game. We deserved to win the game. The refs took that from us. But it is time now to break through or break down. That is the theme of this week. If any of the players end up watching this, that is the theme this week. Are you going to let the fire in your hearts ignite to finally pull through for the big win? Or are you going to let the devastation destroy your football character and come out sloppy? And we got to come out and give Virginia Tech this Saturday, October 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time in Blacksburg. We got to give Virginia Tech the business, because this is a very mercurial season so far for Virginia Tech. So let's just kind of narrate what their season has looked like so far. So Brent Pry, who had been their coach since 2021, he gets fired after going 0-3 to start the season. So, I thought they looked pretty decent, even though the final score didn't dictate it. In week 1 against South Carolina, they lost pretty big to Vanderbilt. But again, Vanderbilt's, somehow one of the highest ranked and best teams in the SEC this year. So they started off with two really tough opponents, in my opinion. But I think week 3 is what got him fired. Week 3 got him fired. When you lose to Old Dominion and you surrender 45 points to Old Dominion after having a 16-24 overall record since you've come to Virginia Tech, which has a pretty rich legacy, you're going to get the seat becomes too hot. The seat becomes too hot and you get fired. So he gets fired, and they name the offensive coordinator, Philip Montgomery, as the interim head coach. Now, a little bit about Philip Montgomery. He's the former Tulsa head coach. He was there for 7 seasons, overall record 43-53. So, just below 500 each year. He was Auburn's offensive coordinator for a brief time in 2023. Did not overlap with Robbie Ashford's time in Auburn, which I'm thankful for, because he doesn't get the clues on Robbie's, history and backstory quite as much. But fired by head coach Hugh Freeze midway through the season as the offense really struggled. But they are 2-0 so far with Philip Montgomery as their head coach. And they started by a strong win over a Southern Conference opponent, which is expected. They beat them 38-6. They beat Wofford. But then they pulled off a major win against Virginia Tech. Against NC State. And it came down to, the final minutes and them getting a 4th down stop as NC State was trying to drive to get in field goal range to perhaps win the game. But they won a tight, close game and held that somewhat potent NC State offense to only 21 points, held Hollywood Smothers, who we couldn't stop to save our lives, held him to 67 rushing yards, I believe. So there were some rumors that some of the players, when Coach Pry got fired, didn't want to stick with the program, were done. But Philip Montgomery has galvanized them. He has turned around the feelings surrounding the team. And they're 2-0 so far with him as the coach. So it is our job to end that 2-0 and put Virginia Tech back on their losing trajectory, at least for 1 week, right? And so Wake Forest runs the power spread. Virginia Tech runs the smash mouth spread. They name it different things, guys, but like my brother said a few weeks ago, a lot of these colleges, we just all run small iterations of similar style offenses, which are very balanced and varied depending on, like what is going on in the game. But it's more pro style now with some college spread elements, is basically how I would describe their offense. Stan says, I hope Wake wins every game left on the schedule. Go Deac's. And that's the thing. I don't think this team is lacking in talent. That I think that's possible, actually, even against Florida State. If we have a relatively healthy team, I think we have the talent on both sides of the ball to be in any game. But yeah, they're going to focus on establishing the run. They're going to have multiple formations and personnel. They like to run a lot of zone in the run game. They like RPOs, but they also like these true spread stacked wide receiver formations where they have twins. They have two receivers out really wide, bunched up together towards the sideline to spread the defense out so that they can run the ball with less people in the box. They'll take their deep shots. It's a lot like Wake Forest offense. It's a lot like it with a few different wrinkles and philosophical things that they believe that are a little different than Coach Ezell. But their quarterback is a tank. Kyron Drones, senior, 6'2", 235 pounds, kind of reminds me of the frame of Dexter Williams that we saw against Kennesaw State in week 1, but a lot more talented. A lot more talented. So far passing this year, 62% completions. That's not, standout number, but it's not a bad number either. Roughly over 1,100 passing yards, 8 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Running is very interesting. In terms of the run game, and I see the comment, Michael, I'm going to get to you in a minute. In 2023, Drones ran for over 800 yards, 5 yards a carry, and 5 touchdowns. So far in 2025, it's been much less designed running for Kyron Drones. And he's only averaging 2.5 yards per carry. Now, some of that is because his offensive line isn't very good and he takes sacks. And in college football, they count your sack yardage against your run yardage, which I don't think is really fair to the quarterback statistics, but it is what it is. But he does already have 4 rushing touchdowns. So when they get in the red zone, when they get in the goal line situations, he is going to be doing the Haynes King designed runs, and he outweighs Haynes King by 20 pounds. So we got to be ready because he's pretty, he's not, Damon Claiborne fast. He's probably not even Robbie Ashford fast, but he's mobile and he's going to escape pressure. He's going to escape pressure to make throws down the field. He's going to escape pressure to check it down to his running backs. Let me look at Michael's comment real quick. Sorry, I'm learning, guys. I'm learning to balance the comments here. So Michael says, don't forget the blown call that went Wake's way on the so-called forward pass, clearly fumble backward pass. Yeah, we had a call go our way, but I mean, come on now, like the call of all calls, the call that should have been the most obvious call in the world. And not to mention, he was possibly Burkhalter, our receiver, was possibly pass interfered with deep down the field. It was like a double blown call on literally the play that ends the game. We're not going to be remembering some forward pass that maybe should have been a fumble. Just that's not going to be the Wake Forest experience. Stan Gardner said, I'll be watching the Wake VT game with great interest because he's a Georgia Tech fan and they play them next week. Yeah, like I got to kind of shout out Georgia Tech fans, like, and I got to kind of call out my Wake fans. I know we're a smaller school, guys, but man, you guys let me just get flooded with Georgia Tech fans last week. Just bum rush, just ratioed. 34 comments on the video, every single one of them being a Georgia Tech fan. I know they are at the point that we are trying to get back to right now, so there's more enthusiasm. But I hope this game against Georgia Tech gave us as a fan base a little more enthusiasm to support Coach Dickert, to support this team, because this team deserves it. Let me talk about the running backs. Tyrion Stewart is a bowling ball, guys. Like he reminds me, and you'll have to be old enough to remember the reference, but he reminds me a little bit of Maurice Jones-Drew, who played for UCLA and the Jacksonville Jaguars for a lot of years. Like this dude is 5'9", 222-pound bowling ball with a lot of burst, with a lot of lateral agility. Now, he doesn't have the long speed. If once he breaks away, we can probably run him down. But he had a huge 65-yard run against NC State. And, you know, their starting running back, who they assumed would be the starter coming into the season, Marcellus Hawkins, is another bowling ball type figure as well, 5'11", 219 pounds. They roughly have, you know, about the same amount of rushing yards combined on the season when you look at them against each other. But the thing that sticks out about Stewart is he's averaging like 9, almost 10 yards a carry. So we've got yet another, it seems like every week, Wake has at least 1 to 2 running backs on the opposing team that put, you know, a great challenge to us. Their wide receivers, you know, their wide receiver 1 is Aiden Green. He's 6'2", 190 pounds. He's more of a field stretcher, but he can also play the possession receiver role. He's just kind of a balanced all-around receiver. Now, he is a little thin in the britches, so let's bring that hurt, GT fans. Not injury, but let's show them we're here. Let's hit them a little bit within the rules of the game. They've also got a healthy Donovan Green, which, yes, that Donovan Green, the one from Mount Airy, North Carolina, who played for the DEACS for 4 seasons. They have that Donovan Green. He's so far been one of their leading receivers. He was quiet in the NC State game. I don't know if that's because an injury popped up. I have so much traumatic stress from Donovan Green injuries that I almost assume that is the case. But he's their power receiver. You know, Donovan Green, we all know if he's at full strength, he is a problem. And he's like pound for pound, one of the most talented receivers you're going to see in a college football game if he's 100%. And then Cameron Seldon, he's about 6'1", 219 pounds, power slot type receiver. They have a tight end who's from Pilot Mountain, North Carolina, about 20 miles down the road from Winston-Salem and about 10 miles down the road from where Donovan Green grew up in Mayberry / Mount Airy, North Carolina. Benji Gosnell from Pilot Mountain is a balanced 6'5", 255-pound tight end who made a crucial catch to make sure that they beat State last week. He's a great blocker. He's just an all-around guy that you're going to see on the field a lot. And then on the O-line, no one's grading out. In terms of PFF grades, no one is standing out. So I think that is where Wake can have an advantage. We need our defensive tackles. We need Jaden Loving, Lohavishan, Afalava, Mateen. We need those guys to dominate inside. We need our edge rushers to get to the quarterback. And when we do get to the quarterback, we need to make sure that that we're keeping that balance and Drones isn't creating plays with his legs because he's used to getting pressure. He's been getting pressure all season and he's been dealing with it. In the last 2 weeks, he's dealt with it in a beautifully well capacity. Like some of the throws he was making while he was scrambling last week against State were just incredible. So Drones is going to be the key in terms of us getting pressure on him, getting sacks on him. We could not seem to get a sack on Haynes King. We have to get sacks on Drones, and we have to dominate up front. I think our linebackers are good enough to tackle their two running backs, and I think our DBs are good enough to cover their receivers, but we have to win the game up front. How about giving GT a shout out for saving your program $50,000 in the field rush? I appreciate that comment, Stan, but I think the program would gladly have paid that $50,000. A Wake Forest field rush with our 5,000 students would have probably looked more like a field trot of a small crowd. So I don't even know if we would have deserved the fine if we did storm the field. It would have been great as a Wake fan to see us get to do that. But yeah, you guys didn't save us the money. The refs saved us the money. So maybe the refs can take heart in saving us $50,000. I'll just leave that where it is. Defensive philosophy. So again, this theme I've talked about all season, these young up-and-coming coordinators doing very well at schools. So for Virginia Tech, the defensive coordinator is a young man by the name of Sam Seifkes. I butchered the hell out of that. I wasn't going to look up how to say it. I'll figure that out on Saturday while they're playing him. But good old Sam here. Sam is 34 years old. He's got his first big break becoming the defensive coordinator for Wofford in 2018. That was only about 5 years after he graduated from college. He had been, quality control analyst, position coach for small schools, just that same track that all of these guys who are just, it's built in their blood that they want to be college coaches. He took a similar path as those guys. He made it to the NFL as an assistant linebacker coach after leading the Southern Conference to having the number one ranked defense and the number one ranked running defense in the Southern Conference for 2 years straight. He was an assistant linebacker coach and quality control coach for the Minnesota Vikings for 2 years. He was a linebacker coach for the Arizona Cardinals for the past 2 years. Zaven Collins, he did a lot to resurrect his career after perhaps looking like a bit of a bust early on in his career. He runs the four-man fronts just like the rest of the teams we have played so far. Scott Jones says, I would have paid $50,000 to see us beat you guys. So at least I got some Wake fans showing up, talking that S back at Georgia Tech. I appreciate it, Scott. I would have paid the money too, just to see us get that huge program defining win in the Dickert era. But one thing that Sam does differently with his four-man fronts than what you're going to see from most teams is he's going to have four men typically, but sometimes his defensive ends aren't going to have their hands in the dirt. Like either one or both of them are going to be standing up. Sometimes he's only going to have like two down linemen and like an extra linebacker standing up with like two stand-up defensive ends. So it's going to look like a five-man front. Sometimes it's going to look like a three-man front, and he's going to bring some pressure off the edge or up the middle somewhere. So it's usually a four-man base defense, 4-2-5/4-3, but he's going to vary the way he deploys that to try to create confusion. And I really kind of wish Wake did a little more of that, right? Like with us, it's just we got our four down linemen. Sometimes a guy's going to step up in a gap, but it's not nearly as varied as Coach Sam does. So I like that. I like the fact that he does that. He runs mainly cover two. When he is running these cover two schemes, we need to be taking the deep shots. He'll also drop his corners super deep and run these cover threes where he has one safety deep, and then he's going to use his other safety to kind of be a spy or to jump routes to try to create turnovers. So Robbie has to be aware of that. He has to keep his eyes in that defensive backfield, and his first job is to identify the coverage, make his first read, and get to the second read. 2 seconds, Robbie, maybe 2.5 seconds. If you don't see it, find the hole, create time, be creative. But the main thing is be decisive, because there's going to be a lot of illusion here. So don't fall for the illusion. Be as decisive as you can. But if there is any doubt and your legs are working, use those legs, right? Because we don't need turnovers. Defensive players to watch, it's, they don't have like one All-American. They don't have like one or two stars. Like they're a lot like Wake. Like we have a lot of good defensive players. Like you could call certain players the star player for us, but we just have a lot of good, solid players. They're a lot like us in that respect. Their leading tackler on the year is Isaiah Cash. He came from Sam Houston as a transfer. He's got 25 tackles on the season. Caleb Spencer and the guy you see on your far right, Noah Chambers, who's a true freshman. These guys' snap counts have been going up. Now, Noah Chambers, I think his snaps only went up as a linebacker because of an injury, but he played like really well against NC State. So they've got these two linebackers, Spencer and Chambers, who both have really high PFF grades. Spencer was a Miami guy. He transferred in. His snap counts are going up progressively each game. So two really good linebackers that we got to get hats on in the running game. Damon's got to be healthy, because if he's not, these guys are tackling machines. They have a defensive tackle who, his snaps are going up as well. Cody Heisman, 6'4", 297 pounds, big old guy, but his overall PFF grade as a defensive player is an 83.6, which is an A. Like in terms of PFF, that's an A grade. And then Elijah Fall, he's their leading sack guy. They got a lot of guys who got like 1 sack, 1.5 sacks on the season. It's spread out, including with a guy like Ben Bell. But Fall is the guy. He's 6'3", 288 pounds as a defensive end. He has an NFL frame, and he seems like a redshirt senior who is coming into his own in his senior season. So Fall is the guy we got to be sure we're getting, chip blocks on. If he's lined up on our left side, our blind side, that's when I really want some help for, our left tackle. Ben Bell, he's just he's like a 6-year senior, been there forever. He doesn't have the measurables, but he's going to be there consistently on just about every down. And he's just going to be a consistent player. So that's some of the defensive, schematics and players that I think we should be looking out for. Keys to winning and the final prediction. So the number one key to winning, it should be number 1, 2, and 3. It should be all of it. Is Ashford, Claiborne, Barnes health status. If we have a healthy Ashford, like 90% mobility Ashford, if we have a 90% Claiborne and a 90% Barnes, I think we win this game. If they start to fall below that, then things could look a little sketchy. And so I think Barnes is okay. I think he might have just got the wind knocked out of him. But if he is okay, he cannot disappear in the second half. Have to get the guy the ball. If Claiborne is good to go, he needs 20-plus carries. Ashford, if his legs are good to go, he needs 10-plus designed runs. If those things happen, we score points against Virginia Tech's defense. They may have held NC State to 21 points last week, but NC State had some turnovers. And I think our offense is starting to show that when all the pieces are there, we can be very explosive. Stopping the quarterback run when we know it's coming. I know, no one's been able to stop Haynes King as a runner all season, and we couldn't stop him either, even when we knew it was coming. Drones, his designed runs are much more predictable. So when it's 3rd and short, when it's 4th and goal, that's when it's coming. And we got to know it's coming. We got to stack the line. We got to match up personnel-wise with whatever formation they come out in. And we got to know that when it's time to get those short down situations, a quarterback power run is likely coming. And so we got to stop it when we know it's coming. And then the third thing is just mental fortitude. Will we come out defeated because of the heartbreak of last week, or will we come out looking to defeat Virginia Tech? Will we come out with the fire ignited, or will we come out with the fire extinguished because we lost a heartbreaking game? I'm choosing to believe, and you can see it in my final prediction, that we come out with the fire and that we win this game 28-24. Kylan Drones has a good game. They're able to score, but our defense has shown consistently that it's good enough to limit even really good offenses to a decent amount of points, besides the NC State game, where our offense just completely failed us. I think we can hold Virginia Tech to 24 points fairly easily. Can we score 28 points if Ashford and Claiborne and Barnes are all 90% or better? We got 28 points to put up on this Virginia Tech defense, which is okay, but also has given up a lot of points to some good programs and also to Old Dominion this year. They didn't magically get all new personnel. So they did get 2 linebackers that are ascending, but I think we can score 28 points and beat them 28-24. Shane's final prediction. Shane couldn't join us tonight, but he sent me his final prediction. Very similar to mine. He thinks we win 26 and hold Virginia Tech to 21. If you're still with me and you are not subscribed to this channel, I don't care if you're a Georgia Tech fan or a Virginia Tech fan at this point, especially if you're a Wake fan. Subscribe, hit that like button, do all the things. I knew when we started this channel, we were never going to be doing this for money. We were never going to be doing this to become, mass media figures or anything like this. This is all for the love of the game. This is all for the love of the DEACS. That's all it is. Like, I love Wake Forest sports. I've been following it with a passion for my entire life. And I saw a space in YouTube where we had the Wake Forest official page, which put out its own media, but we didn't have any media content as far as fans, journalists, sports experts talking about us. And so I wanted my brother and I to fill that void. We're just fans and we want to collaborate with other fans. And that's what this is all about. So hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't. We need to ignore Enter Sandman and take it to the Hokies. Thank you, Scott Jones. And then Michael Williams says, I will be pulling for y'all the rest of the season too. I appreciate it, Michael. We appreciate it. Look, I got some love for Georgia Tech as well. I got a really good friend of mine who is a Georgia Tech fan, and he and I are both paraplegics, and we just have an affinity for one another. So I've always kind of had a soft spot for Georgia Tech. And so, yeah, I'm going to be pulling for you guys. I hate that the game went down the way it did. But you guys, are set up now to do some really special things. And I think Wake is set up to do some really special things as well this season and beyond. I think we have set a foundation culturally with Coach Dickert to do some really special things moving forward. So, Scott, no, thank you. I'm happy we started this too, but none of this is possible without the support of fans. It feels good not to be talking into the abyss. It's good to have you guys here with us. I really appreciate it. We'll see you guys. I meant to say, we're going to do an immediate post-game show after the Virginia Tech game, immediately after the game, so you guys can react live. We were going to do it after the Georgia Tech game, but it was just too heartbreaking. I had to go cry in my room for 2 hours. Not really, but I was so broken. But we're going to go directly after Virginia Tech, and we'll put all the links out so you guys can join us. Thanks for watching, guys. Go DEACS. We'll see you guys after the game. We're going to beat Virginia Tech. I'm calling it right now. So thanks again. We'll see you next time on Saturday. Shane will be with me, and go freaking